In the previous video, we worked on authentication, and authentication really just deals with the registering, logging in of a user. It essentially just streamlines that whole process. Today, I want to work on authorization, which handles access to very specific parts of the app. And typically, you will find authorization being implemented in admin panels like we are currently building. Just to give you a quick example of what I mean, I am currently logged in as a standard user, and as a standard user, I am not an admin. I shouldn't have any access to anything within the backend, and I shouldn't be able to see this link that we have here to the admin dashboard, because I can also go ahead and log into this backend or go to this backend, and that's not something that I should be able to do as a standard user. So to prevent that, what I want to do is I want to start implementing some permissions. Now, typically, I will use roles for this sort of a thing, and I will have permissions grouped under, just like we have set up. But typically, I will focus more on roles. And for smaller things, if I was using the Laravel front end instead of Vue, then I would use permissions for very specific things like the buttons or the links and stuff like that. But in this project, I've decided that I'm going to focus on permissions, as for some reason, people seem to think that that's the best way to do it. And it's really not a question of whether it's the best or most accurate way to do it, as it is based on preference and it is based on your specific use case. So I'm going to be using permissions to do this. Let's head to the backend and start configuring what we need to configure. If you've been following along with this project, you know that we are using Laratrust as our package to handle these roles and permissions relationships. And we have a file for that, which is the Laratrust seeder. In this seeder, we have different roles in here. So we have our super admin, admin, moderator, developer, standard user, and then we have a permissions map here where we are giving access to these different functions within our project. Now, I want to add another one to this, which is really going to be very simple, and it's just going to be for access. The access, I just want to be one permission that's just an overarching permission that will be able to access. So for example, in order to access the backend, we're going to use this permission on our routes so that a user can't just get to that backend. They'll be greeted with an error, or however you want to implement this in your project. But typically you can create an error page. You can do whatever you want with that. That's kind of out of the scope of what we're doing. But what I want to do is just give it a general access permission. So let's go up top and let's add all of our other permissions that we need, including that access. So the first one with the super admin, I'm going to copy this one, paste it, and I'm just going to call it panel. And as I said, this is just going to be for the overarching, can we get to the admin side of things? And this user obviously is going to be able to do that. Now, the other one we have are for the different tables that we're using, which is the permissions, roles, and users table. So we're going to go ahead and add those here. Admins. And what are we doing with admins? Well, they're going to be able to access admins. They're going to be able to create, update, and delete those admins. We don't have a show page or an edit page or anything like that. So I'm going to put A for here for accessing them. So we can also get rid of this read. It'll be A for access, C for create, U for update, D for delete. The next one is going to be for roles, and it's going to have the same permissions. Remember, because this is the super admin, so they're going to be able to do all of that. And this one is going to be for permissions. For the user now, all we need to do is be able to access and update. Profile will remain the same. So let's go ahead and also copy these, because our admin is going to have the exact same permissions as the super admin. Let's go down to moderator and let's see what they can and cannot do. I'm going to just go ahead and paste them all in for now. And the panel, they should be able to access the panel. The admins, they should also be able to access the admins. Again, they're not changing anything about any of these users. They're just going to be able to access them. Same thing for roles, permissions, same thing. Users, same thing. And then again, with the profile, it's just going to be read and update. So I'm going to go ahead, copy this one. And let's also add it for the developer. The developer will be able to access the panel. They'll be able to access the admins. And they don't need these two other permissions, but we'll keep them being allowed to use their profile. Now we need to reseed this database so that we have these new permissions associated with these roles in our database. So I'll do artisan, migrate, fresh so that it can drop everything, and then also to seed because it's -- seed. We can exit out of this and let's go to our browser. We'll create a user and see where we are. I'm going to refresh and then we will go to register, fill it in. And as you can see, we registered as a standard user, but we've been brought to this dashboard page, which is not something we want. So we can start by putting that access panel permission on our routes to see what happens with this user. They shouldn't be back here at all, let alone being able to see any of the things that we have. Let's go and do that first. From here, we can go over to the web routes. And right where we have our middleware listed here is where we can add that. Now, the way that Laravel does it is that is now a new middleware for us. So here we can do can access panel because those were the permissions that we just created. That's how Laravel does custom middleware where you're giving permissions. It's one of the ways that you can do it where you're using the can property to say that that user can access panel. Let's save this. We'll go to the browser and see if we can still be on that page. Okay, so now we're getting the 403. This action is unauthorized because this standard user is no longer authorized to access this. Let's go back to the dashboard and let's see how we're going to work on this. Because we're using Inertia, Inertia has a very specific way of handling this sort of a thing. And if we open up the inspection tools and we go over to the Vue Dev tools, if you don't have these, I highly suggest installing it. And let's see, it's been updated and I have no idea. I've never been here before in my life. If we open this up, you can see that we have some properties that are coming in through Inertia for the project. So you have things like scroll regions. It's basically allowing you to interact with Vue in a way where you can tap into it and bring things forward. So as you can see in this props, we have a props auth user key where we have all of the information. Now we haven't added anything to this yet. This is solely from what's coming from Inertia. This is what we get as a default. We have props auth user. Then we have all of the user information. We have their profile photo, everything that we put in, including our is_admin. And then we have some error bags and some other things that belong to Jetstream that pretty much include different things that come with Jetstream. So the email verification, all the extra things that come with Jetstream, that's something that you can access here. As you can see, we don't have anything showing that this user has any kind of permission to do anything. And we know that they do have permissions because we've given them permission. So we should be able to see something like that here, but we haven't told our project that that's the case. So let's head into the text editor and work on that. Now, how we do this is we basically we want to share with Inertia things that we're going to need on the front end in order to be able to implement something like this. And how we would do that is in the Inertia middleware, handle Inertia middleware. It's the handle Inertia requests, and this extends the middleware. As you can see here, we have the root view of app, which is correct because the front of our app is using the ID equals app, and that's something that Vue needs. It needs an ID in order to inject all this stuff into the Laravel page. But you can also see we have the version, and then here we have a section where we can share different things. There are things that are already shared by default. We've already seen that when we looked at the inspection tools, but there are things that we can also add to this. How can we do this? Well, what I would typically do is create a new key. Here I will create something that is just a new key. So like we saw in the Vue Dev tools that everything had a key associated. So it was auth or props.auth. Whatever. This is going to be user, admin user, And then I'm going to say that that is a function. Now this function, we're going to have a variable because we want to know what is the admin user, right? So we need to find that admin user. We'll say auth user. Here in this variable, we're just looking for the authenticated user so that we can check against it. If this user is going to have certain permissions, then they can do this. If they do not have certain permissions, then they cannot do this. That's all that this is doing. So we're just telling the front end what that admin user is and what they can and cannot do. What here we can do is return that admin user variable, and we'll say return admin user. And I'm going to put a question mark so that we can say if certain conditions exists. If that condition does not exist, then we'll just return null. What are the conditions? Well, if this user can do certain things, then they should be allowed to do certain things. We're going to use that can property that we have that comes with our middleware. And we're going to say that that equals, and then we'll put in some straight brackets so that we can have an array of different things. The first thing I want is to be able to access the panel. We'll say access panel, admin user. This package has some functions that we can tap into, and one of them is able to, then we'll say access panel, because that's the name of the permission. So we're basically just taking whatever the permission is, just instead of hyphenating it, we're going to just put them together like this. And that's something that we can see on the front end. For us, our property will be the props.adminuser.can access panel. Hope that makes sense. Let's go ahead and do the rest of them. I'm going to copy and paste a bunch of these. So the next one is going to be to access admins. And again, access admins. Let me close that up a bit so that we can see this a little bit more clear. But we have access admins here. Then we're going to have update admins. And again, update admins. Then we have access roles. Access roles. Now I'm going to pause the video so that I can go ahead and finish all of these out, and then I'll come back and show you the finished product. Now that we have them all done, we're basically just matching this up to what we have in that Laratrust Cedar configuration file that we have that's connecting all of these things. These are something that we should be able to check against and to see on the front end. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Let's head to the browser and see what difference this has made to our project. Now, if we come here and we refresh, as you can see, we have our props listed in here, and this is where we should be able to see this. So I'm going to go ahead, refresh this. We're going to open up Inertia again, initial page. And if we go to props, you see now we have a new key in here for admin user. So admin user can access admins, and now it's checking against all of these. So the one that we're going to be looking for to be able to change what happens with this link right here, we can use the access panel. The same thing that we did for the routes, we can do for this link here. Let's go ahead and see how that would work. Now, where is that being displayed? Well, it's being displayed in the app layout. So let's go to that, because that's what's the layout for everything on the front end involving the user. And then we want to go down to that link that we created right in here. And now this is something that we can attach onto this. So I'm going to just move these down just so we have access to everything. That should be it for that. And then in here, I'm going to say if, well, what's the condition? Well, we have page, props, admin user, that's our key, can access panel. I'm going to go ahead, save that. And now let's see what we have in the browser. That button is officially gone from in here, right? So now we no longer see it. Well, let's go ahead, log out. Well, let me refresh that. We'll go ahead, log out. I want to go ahead and log in as, let's say, the developer. At app.com, password login. Now we're getting an unauthorized action for this developer, and the developer is an admin. Now we have our redirects going where they're supposed to. What exactly is going on? Well, let's head over to the text editor and take a look. With this package that we're using, the Laratrust package that we're using, there is a config file, which we took a brief look at in the beginning of the series at some point, where we have these keys and we can do different things with them. I'm just going to head all the way down to the bottom and then go up a little bit to this particular section here where we have the Laratrust permissions as gates. All it's saying is that it's determining if you can check a user that has a permission using the can method, which is something that we're doing. Right now we have it set to false, and because we have it set to false, it's not actually acknowledging the fact that we're using any middleware to do this. Here, really quick, we can just go ahead, change it to true, and let's try and see if that works now. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this. And now we should be able to get to the dashboard, and that looks good. I'm going to make a change to that later on, how we lost our CSS again. I'll make a change to it later on. Just for now, know that that's just where we are. Okay. But basically, now we can see this as the developer. And again, if we're not logged in as a developer, let's go ahead and register a new user. Register. Let's just try to go type in manually admin dashboard. Again, we are forbidden. Let's go ahead and log in back as that developer so that we can make some other changes. This is supposed to be app. That's just a default. You can change that to whatever you want to change it to at some point. That's just the default, and that's where we are for now. Here we are at the back end in the admin panel where we're allowed to be. This user, this developer, can see this page. They can see everything in the dashboard part of it. But when it comes to the roles, permissions, users, admins, we've set it up so that they can only see admins. They can go to this page, no problem, but they shouldn't be able to see any of these other links that we have here. So let's go ahead and do the same thing that we did with the front end and that link to these. But before we do that, let's go and check to see what it is they're actually allowed to do. Now, if we come here to the props again, we can see that this user can access admins, access panel. Let me move that up. Access permissions, false, and access roles. See, all of this stuff is false. So this is something that they shouldn't be able to do. But we need to be able to specify on the page what needs to be changed. That's why we want to go and change these. Let's go back to that app layout really quick, just so we can grab it and I don't have to type out everything from it. We are using this if statement in here. Where we want to go is the sidebar. Now, the first one in here that we want to take a look at is the admins. Admins are down here. Let's do this. We're going to take this, make a space, and then I'm going to paste it in. And now instead of access panel, it'll be access admins. If they're allowed to see this, then this should be good to go. So let's try it. I go ahead, refresh. This is a developer. Then yes, they see admins. Let's try the one above it, which is users, which they're not supposed to be able to see. Now I'm going to grab this line. We'll go up to users. Paste that in. And this one is access users. Save that and let's try it again. Now that's interesting. I lost permissions. Why is that? Because I put it on the wrong one, which is users. Let's do this. Access, this should be permissions. And let's just do all of them, just because I feel like I wasted some time today. This should be users. And then we'll go up to this one, which is for roles. And we have another one for roles. We'll go ahead, paste that here, and this will be access roles. Okay, let's check the browser. Cool. So now the only one that we see here is the admins. Now, we can still go to these pages. We'll deal with that in a minute. But for now, we can see what is going on in here. We'll deal with that a little bit later. For now, what I want to do is I want to log in as the moderator, because even though the moderator can see a bunch of things, the moderator can't do these other things in here. So let's go ahead and log out. We'll log in as the moderator. And now we should be able to see our admins, users, permissions, roles. Yes, yes, yes. We can go ahead and access all of these things the way the moderator is supposed to. But the moderator shouldn't be able to see things like edit. They shouldn't have any access to this. So let's go ahead and work on that. So we'll just kind of tackle all of these together. I'm going to go ahead, copy this. And then I want to go to the pages admin. We'll start with the admins and we'll go from the top to the bottom, work our way down. Because this user isn't going to be able to see any edit button or anything with this user, I'm going to go ahead and also add that if statement for the actions table as well as the actual button. So here I'll go ahead and I'll change it to update admins. And then I'll copy this one, and this will be the exact same one that we put now for that button. Let's just quickly make sure that those two things are gone. Okay, cool. So our table still looks good, but the moderator can't actually see any of those buttons. And let's go ahead and start doing the same thing for the other tables. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this one. For the permissions, we have a couple of different other permissions, which is create, update, and delete. So those are the ones that we can use for in here. And we will go ahead and start with the button, which is the create button right here. And I'll add it to this entire card tools thing in here. This one will be create buttons, create permissions. I'm going to copy this one, and then we'll go down to these individual buttons, and I'll go ahead and make some space for them as well, just so that we can see everything. And this one, instead of create permissions, this will be update permissions. Copy this one, and then we're going to do the same thing for the button for delete. And this one, the permission for this will just be delete permissions. Now we should also do something for that title, and something easily that we can do for the title of the table for the actions is, instead of just wiping it out altogether, we can say if, paste that or copy it, and then I'm going to paste it here, and then I'm going to say or. So two pipe symbols are for or. So if we are going to update or delete the permissions, whether we have permissions to update or delete them, then we'll also see this one. Copy this one, we'll go to roles, and we will do the same thing. We'll head down to the button, the first button, which will be create. And actually, since I have this one, I'm going to add it to our actions table just so that we have the whole thing in there. So if admin user can update roles, or delete roles. Copy this one, and then we'll go up to that button and start working on that. Oh no, I wanted to put it on the card tools. So if props admin user can create roles, get rid of this thing here. Okay, good. We have the VIF on that. We'll come down to the buttons and we will do the same thing. This one will be update roles. And this one will be delete roles. Grab that and we'll do the same thing for the users. And the only thing that we have for the users is to update them. So that's the one that we're going to use. And then we'll do this on the entire TD, if update users. Let's go on the front end and see what we have going on for this moderator. Okay, so I'm going to close that. I'm going to refresh it just in case. And again, we can see admins, we don't have the buttons. Users don't have the buttons. Permissions don't have the buttons. And you can even move this to the right if they whatever, but I don't really care at the moment. It's not really all that necessary. And the same thing for the roles where we don't have any buttons because the moderator can't actually do anything in here. So let's go ahead to the admin. The admin and the super admin have the exact same permissions. And let's see what we have to work on from there. Tables. Okay, so we see all of our tables in here. Admins. We have our buttons in here. Users. We have our buttons in here. Permissions. We have all of our buttons in here. And the roles. Yet again, we have all of our permissions in here. Okay, great. Now, yes, we've pretty much tackled whether or not the user can access any of these pages in the back. We've set it up so that the middleware will pretty much keep anyone from being able to just kind of create these roles or permissions or what have you. There is another thing that I want to do to basically demonstrate an alternative way of doing this. If we head over to the admin controller, there are ways to, instead of putting that can access admins in the web routes, we can create sort of an overarching middleware property to put on these admin controllers. My preference is just to do an overarching one in the web routes and then just tackle specific ones in here. For example, something you can do in here too is to use the gates. Now, you don't have to use both of these methods. I've already shown you one way to do it. This is just another way of giving access to these pages. I got a lot of questions about it before, saying it's duplicative. I don't think I made it clear that I'm not saying do both of them. I'm just showing you two different ways of doing it. How we would do that is, let's say for the admins, what we can do is, since we're using middleware, we can use the gate, and it is the facade. And then we can say allow if function the user equals user is able to, and then the permission is just access admins. That's all that it is. It's just allowing if this user is able to access whatever it is, and the user is just the authenticated user or whatever the user is. And let me see if I can see what this error is in here. Unexpected T return online 19. Exit out of that. Okay, so that's gone. Open that back up. And this is something that you can do on individual functions, which is something that I'm going to do here. And I just want to go through them really quick. So I'm going to copy that one from there. And on the update for this, paste it in. And now this one is update admins. And that's the last function that we have accessible in here. I'm going to go ahead, copy this one. The admin dashboard is pretty much already taken care of. So let's go ahead to the permission controller and do it in here. This is the gate. I think I need to import user here. This one will be to access permissions. This one is create permissions. This one is update permissions. And this one is delete permissions. Make sure that I imported that user. Okay, the user is imported up here. So that's the permission controller. Let's go ahead and do it for the roles. I think I need to import that user. Access roles. This will be create roles. This one will be update roles. And this one will also be delete roles. User controller. This one will be access users. And then we have update users. Okay, so that's just giving you an idea of something potentially that you could do to keep people from being able to create, delete, update. And you can also do this even in the web routes you can have on each of the, well, we did resource groups, but if we didn't do resource groups, then on each individual one, you can also add the can access and admins can create roles or whatever it is. You can also do it in there too. This is just a different way of doing it. And it's just something that I wanted to clear up and to show you again how to do it in just a little bit in a more cleaner fashion than I did the last time. Save that. Let's make sure that we didn't break anything. Go ahead, refresh. And I'm logged in as an admin. Let's go ahead and create a role. Role was created, and this is the one I just created. And if I wanted to edit, this should still be the same. It's been changed in here. And then if I want to delete, are you sure? Yes, delete it. This all works the same. If you're enjoying the content, please go ahead and click that like button as it really does help out the channel. Here's a video YouTube thinks you'll like, and here's a playlist to follow along. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.